How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me with another math lesson with Mr. Woodford. Today, we'll be diving into lesson 5.3. And this time we're talking about proportional relationships, not with tables, but with equations. Now, there are a couple ways to represent proportional relationships. You know it as fractions that equal to a fraction. We talked about tables. And there's another way of equations, and there's also graphs. But let's talk about equations for today. So let's go and look at the lesson together. As usual, take a moment to pause the video now to begin to work on the bell work, and it reads as such. I want you to find the unit rate, which is at 1 second for how fast this particular turtle travels, and they tell you a scenario at the top about it taking 3 seconds to travel 10.5 inches, and you kind of see that displayed on this table. I want the unit rate, which is a distance per second, so at 1 second, and I want to fill in the rest of this table. There's missing numbers, and I know we did that in the last lesson, filling in the missing numbers on the table. And then see if you can tell me what the constant rate of change is, or the constant of proportionality. And then if you could tell me how do you think the distance of a tortoise travels is related to time. So what is the relationship between time and the actual distance it travels? Okay, take a moment, see if you can answer that, pause the video. All right. Now, this particular question is very repetitive, and I'm pretty sure when you started doing it, you was like, huh? What? Because you probably calculated the distance or the unit rate for doing 10.5, sorry, my apologies, 10.5 divided by 3, right? 10.5 inches divided by 3 seconds to find out how much it travels in 1 second, right? And you would have got 3.5. which is saying it travels 3.5 inches every second. So the unit rate is 3.5 inches per second. And I'm just going to draw a little sign like that indicating per second. Okay. Now, if you went about it going to find that, you would say, okay, per second, which means this is 3.5 here. Because I would then need to figure out, okay, what's the constant? But if you remember what I said in the last lesson, you remember that I may have said that the constant is the same thing as the unit rate. So the constant proportionality, which is saying that it moves 3.15 seconds, 3.5 inches every second, means I could say if it's 3.5 here, it's got to be 7 there. If it's 10.5 there, it's got to be 14 here, which means this is 17.5. All I did was add 3.5 each one because that's the constant as well as the unit rate, which means that means this is 3.5. Okay, and now how do you think these are related? I think they're related because one, they're proportional, right? They're proportional, which means that as one increases, the other increases, and that's the answer. As one increases, the other increases. Okay. That's a big deal when it comes to proportionality. They have to have a constant rate of change, a constant slope, a constant movement, right? Great, let's go on to what we're working on today. Now we're talking about equations today, okay? Constant of proportionality, finding the constant, we talked about doing y divided by x. And if you look in the actual vocabulary, you'll see that formula is right here. K is equal to y divided by x. But what you also should notice in this vocabulary is there is a formula. There's an equation here. Y is equal to k times x. Now, you know k represents the constant. But in our table that we talked about before, we did this equation. I may have not explained it to you this way, but this is an equation that we're going to end up writing. Y is equal to whatever the constant is multiplied by the x. The good news is, ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to substitute out the x. You don't have to substitute out the y. All I'm asking you to do is find the constant, put it in the middle, and change the k to whatever that number is. Let's do it together. I'm going to do 2 problems with you. So the first one here is a table. And it says, Callie earns money by dog sitting. Great. Now, they don't give me anything other than that sentence, and they give me a table. Now, the table tells me a whole lot. It tells me the number of days Callie dog sits. It tells me the amount of money that Callie earns every day that she dog sits. So on day 3, she got $48, and day 4, $64 in total. So there is money here. There is amount of days. And the first question is it proportional? Well, I mean, Ms. Orford, the only way I'll figure out if it's proportional is if I do y, oh, sorry, my apologies. I thought I switched back to marker. I need to do y divided by x. So if I did y divided by x for every single one of these, which is going to tell me the constant, that's a k. I'm going to say, okay, what is 16 divided by 1? 16. Now remember, the way it's going to be proportional is every single one of these has to work. So let's try all of them. 32 divided by 2, is that 16? Yes. 48 divided by 3, is that 16? Yes. 64 divided by 4, is that 16? Yes. And 80 divided by 5, is that 16? Yes. So there is a proportional relationship here. I'm going to say yes. And I also found the constant. So what's the equation? Y is equal to 16x. Now, how do I know it's y is equal to 16x? Because the equation really is y is equal to k times x. K is 16. And all we're doing is substituting in k here. That's your goal for today, to find the equation of tables and of word problems. Now, that was a table. Let's talk about finding the equation of a word problem. Now, 2 pounds of cashews cost $19, and 8 pounds cost $76. Show that the relationship between the number of pounds of cashews and the cost is proportional. Then write an equation for the relationship. Now, the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, is we can always make a table here. That's how we're going to show. Okay, so let's say 2 pounds, right? We got cashews. Let's say that's cashews, and this is money. So 2 pounds of cashews cost $19. 8 pounds of cashews cost $76. They want to know if this is any type of proportional relationship here, right? Well, the only way I'll know is if I do y divided by x, right? So if I do 19 divided by 2, is that the same thing as 76 divided by 8? And this is my math. This is where I start. So I say, okay, let me divide here. 19 divided by 2 is going to give us 9.5. Now, what does that mean? And because it's a word problem, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to clean this up because I need you to get this. Because it's a word problem, because there's words here, my answers need to make sense, right? This was money on top. That means it cost me $9.50 for 1 pound of cashews, for 1 pound. 1 LB, 1 pound of cashews. Okay. Whereas on the bottom, I do 76 divided by 8, and I get $9.50, which is also for 1 pound of cashews. So is this proportional? The answer is yes, it is. I created a table to show there's a proportional relationship. I found the constant, which is 950. Because there's a constant, because this is a unit rate, I can tell you, yes, it is proportional. Both of these make sense. So what's the equation? Well, y is equal to my constant multiplied by x. And that's what we're doing. So on these word problems, you will have to create an actual table. That way you can see what you're doing and then be able to decide. Now, did you have to create a table? No, you can just do the math on the right if you like, but it's easier for you to see, okay, for 2 pounds, $19, 8 pounds, $76, is it proportional? Does it cost the same amount for 1 pound of cashew? Or if you flipped it around, you could do that too. For $1, how much cashews am I getting? Either way, you'll see that there is a constant whenever you divide whatever y is by the x. Okay, but once you're done with that, make sure you write the equation. Okay, cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's lesson. I want you to begin to work on the independent practice, which does just that. There is 2 sets of tables here, 2 sets of word problems, and your goal is to find the equations and the proportionality of these equations. Okay, thank you so much for joining me with another math lesson with Mr. Wilfred. Have a wonderful day.